the better you become, the less fun, we'll say, quote unquote, it can be, because it does feel like more like a job. But the way I kind of combat that is to remember that every day I get to go out and I get to go run for 10 to 12 miles, and nobody else is doing that with me. That's my time. And that's my way that I can just kind of say, this is the moment where I'm going to meditate. This is how I get ready for the day. This is how I deal with my stress in life. Those moments that aren't at practice with my team and I'm alone, I just think I can find a way to, kind of bring it back to when I fell in love with it in high school. And it's the same thing I'm doing now that I was doing then.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. BolderBoulder. Wow, I get excited just saying it. If you're not familiar with the BolderBoulder 10K that happens here in Boulder every Memorial Day, it's one of the most fun races out there. Runners World named it America's all-time best 10K, and for good reason. This race is for everybody. It's part race, run, walk, spectacle, tribute, and community celebration. In order to get even more psyched for this upcoming race, we are hosting some 5Ks here in Boulder for folks to grab a time to get into a preferred wave. Regardless of if you want to start in the A groups, just want to move up from last year's wave, or have never run in the race before, come on out and join us in Boulder for a fun community 5K to come together and get pumped for the BolderBoulder extravaganza. The first 31 waves are seated entry, and there are plenty more waves for all paces after that. Join us on Saturday, April 8th at the left-hand trailhead at 9 a.m. to get your time trial in. We'll be giving away some gear from brand partners as well, so you're not going to want to miss it. We are proud to share that this episode is sponsored by our friends over at Puma. Here at For the Long Run podcast, we're fans of Puma and have been really impressed with their efforts to support and foster the running community. We're excited to partner with a brand that has such a rich history in sports and that cares deeply about the running community. Puma believes that sometimes all it takes is a spark to make a change, to get motivated, or to try something new or hard. And we couldn't agree more. All we need is that small spark, and the actions will follow to get us there. With that small flicker, anything is possible. Puma running shoes offers supreme cushioning, superior propulsion, comfort, and lightweight technology. I've been running in the DV8 Nitro First Mile, and I love how it has a focus on sustainability. The shoe feels amazing, and even better, it's in collaboration with First Mile. It's made from at least 20% recycled material, as First Mile's focus is on cutting down plastic waste in production and in the supply chain by finding innovative ways to get recycled plastic into products like Puma running shoes. Check out a pair for yourself at puma.com and use the code FORTHELONGRUN for 20% off any Puma Run or Train products. When you support Puma, you support me and the rest of the For the Long Run podcast team. Thanks again to Puma for sponsoring us. We are psyched to announce a new partner of the podcast, Lauren Daniels. Lauren is a realtor helping buyers and sellers in the greater Denver and Boulder area and beyond, and has been a good friend of mine for a few years now. When I decided I wanted to buy a place in Boulder and put down roots here, I was completely overwhelmed by the home buying process. Lauren was already a good friend, so when we first talked about home buying, I felt a huge sense of relief. She's a neighborhood expert, has an incredible attention to detail, available for any and all questions, and made what could be a very difficult process super easy. And now we've got a beautiful home in Boulder. It's close to the trails with a big backyard for Alfie and views of the Flatirons. So if you're even considering buying a home in the area or anywhere, I highly recommend working with Lauren. You can reach her at ldaniels@milehighmodern.com and let her know we sent you. That's ldaniels@milehighmodern.com. Thanks so much to Lauren for supporting the podcast and helping us continue to grow, and for all those miles together. And welcome back. I have Dakotah Lindwurm joining us on the podcast today from Minneapolis. Dakotah, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, of course. I'm really happy to be here.
Of course. So the first question has become a difficult one, or consistently is a difficult one for a lot of people. So we'll start with that. Who is Dakotah?
Who am I? That is a hard one. I am a born and raised Minnesotan. I grew up playing hockey. I started running when I was a freshman in high school, went to Northern State in Aberdeen, South Dakota. It's a small Division II college. Graduated with an Olympic dream and moved back to Minneapolis to train with Minnesota Distance Elite. On the side, I coach and I work as a paralegal at a patent law firm. And I'm a big nerd. I love to read, do things, everything and anything outside. Big camper, hiker, fisher, hunter, kind of, I guess just a true Minnesotan.
Well-rounded. Do you ski as well?
I do not really ski. I will say I have kind of dropped winter sports. In high school, I like to ski and snowboard, but at this point, it's too much of a toll on my body.
Got it. Well, cool. So that is a nice complete picture of Dakotah, the all-around athlete. Talk to me about the Olympic dreams or Olympic dream that you mentioned. Where was that born from?
So, like I said, I went to Northern State. I was actually a walk-on in my program, and it was a super small program, but my coach honestly just kept things really fun and light. And it was never super serious, but when I was a sophomore, I qualified for the Division II championships. Didn't have really a great day there, but after that, qualified for every championship after. And I just was seeing like a super nice progression through my collegiate career. And after I had graduated, my coach was giving a tour to a prospective athlete, and I was just walking around with them, helping, kind of getting them excited. And, he wanted to talk about the accomplishments that I had there. And one of his parents goes, "Are you going to keep running? Like, surely you're not done running." And I was like, "Oh, of course not. I'm going to run local 5Ks. I love to run. I'll continue to train." And my coach looked at me and he goes, "Dakotah, you could qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon." And I was like, whoa. What does that even mean? I didn't really know anything about post-collegiate running when I had graduated. Aside from of course, I knew who Sara was, Des Linden, Kara Goucher. But then the next day I went into his office with a notepad and a piece of paper. And I said, "Hey, I need to know everything that there is to know about post-collegiate running, because if that's an option that, might be even a small opportunity for me, I want to take it, because I loved running so much. And it was something I was seeing a lot of improvement doing."
So that was a couple of years ago. And fast forward to today, you've made mention about keeping it fun and just like really enjoying that progression. What are the ways that you've been able to continue to keep those things true?
Yeah, I think for me, there have definitely been moments where it's not fun. I think I've, after running my 2:25:01 at Grandma's, I did have a really hard time with running mentally, because it all of a sudden this small thing that was once mine became everybody's. It felt like so many people had eyes on me, and there have been moments like that. And I think the better you become, the less fun, we'll say, quote unquote, it can be, because it does feel like more like a job. But the way I kind of combat that is to remember that every day I get to go out and I get to go run for 10 to 12 miles, and nobody else is doing that with me. That's like my time. And that's my way that I can just kind of say, this is the moment where I'm going to meditate. This is how I get ready for the day. This is how I deal with my stress in life. Those moments that aren't at practice with my team and I'm alone, I just think I can find a way to, kind of bring it back to when I fell in love with it in high school. It's the same thing I'm doing now that I was doing then.
You made an interesting comment there around this used to just be this small thing for yourself, and now it's public and available to everyone. You've run 2:25 in the marathon. That's faster than most. What has that been like to have it sort of launched into the public eye?
Yeah, like I said, it was really hard right after Grandma's. I actually ended up talking to my coach and saying, I'm just mentally going through a block with running where I wasn't excited about it, which is really unlike me. If you've ever seen me race, I've got a huge smile on my face. I'm really enjoying it. And even at practice, I'm super excited. And I'm always excited to go get my runs done. But I was going through kind of this mucky, dark space where it just felt scary because I had done something so big. And it was well, what if I can't ever replicate it? Now all these people have eyes on me. And he suggested a sports psych, which honestly was super helpful for me. She kind of helped me find, help me get grounded again in running, I would say.
So on a completely different scale, I've been going through my own relationship with running and like trying to figure out ways to make it fun again. I had my best marathon cycle last fall. I run 2:59. I thought that I was going to run 2:55-ish. I was running 22-mile long runs and finishing 6:30s, kind of a deal. And I ran 3:43 on race day, and haven't really figured it out since. And I'm in this period right now of unstructured running and trying to find that joy. So or refine that joy. So I'm curious for you, what were some of the tactics you took with that sports psych, and how did you work through that?
She had me often say, like, tell her what it meant to be successful, in my opinion. So let's say, back then I thought, well, to be successful, I was going to have to be top 10 at New York. And then she would say, like, kind of make me realize that, like, is being top at 10 at New York going to bring me happiness because that is something that I need? Or is that something I feel like the external pressures of the world are putting on me? So I think she just helped me realize, like, I needed to figure out what was going to bring me happiness based on what I needed, what I thought, how I felt, not what some random guy on Let's Run thinks, and then also she had me journal a lot, and she would have me just write down like 3 good things that happened during my run. And I think that helps you put it in perspective, because you have a couple bad workouts, and like you said, you had a bad race and maybe you're just not feeling it after, and runs are getting hard, and you really start to focus on like those negative things. But by sitting down and saying, okay, think about 3 good things that happened on my run today. The weather was beautiful. I didn't have to stop at a million stop signs. I felt really great. It helps you kind of shadow those dark moments, in my opinion, I guess. And it helps you focus on the better things that are happening.
The practice of gratitude there is super interesting. I'm friends with Amelia Boone, and a few years ago, she was very vocal about gratitude journaling and top or 10 things in the day that she was grateful for. And I got into a practice of doing that. I would sit in the sauna for 20 minutes at the end of the day and just like think through things that happened, or things that, and you go through the, like, I'm grateful for my health and my family's health and my blah, blah, blah. And then like, once you've done it 2 or 3 times, you have to like get a little more creative than, I'm thankful for my health kind of a thing. And it's interesting you say that daily practice or post-run practice of doing that. I think I want to start doing that again, because it was super helpful, and it's a helpful reminder. The part you said about defining success, anyone who's listened to more than a few recent episodes of this podcast knows I love talking about that. I love asking people how they define success. And I find that there's a pretty strong correlation to defining that in a subjective manner and achieving objective levels of success or measures of success. And usually those who define success as like, I ran 2:29 or I ran 3:59 or whatever, like they're going to have a harder time doing that than those who say success is like giving it my best on race day or executing to the best of my ability. Have you thought about that? Have you had that reflection of like that shift between tangible versus intangible?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard thing to balance when this is your job. Like, there are times that I think are important to hit as a professional runner, or, like place-wise is important on February 3rd at the Olympic trials. But whenever I create a goal list now, it's going to have both. It's going to say, this is the type of time I think I'm fit for. But also, there's also going to be goals of, am I having fun in my race? Am I smiling? Am I giving it 100%, never letting myself sit in that dark place that we can often go to in a marathon? And so I think it's important. It's okay to have those goals. I still think of having like, this is the time I want to run or the place I want to get, but it is important to have backup goals of, this is how I want to feel. This is how I want to react to bad situations, because at the end of the day, I can't determine what kind of weather we're going to have in Boston. So sure, I would like to run let's say a 2:26 at Boston, but also if it's a 2018 kind of day, like I'm not probably going to run a 226.
Right.
So you have to.
237 is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Boston is my favorite marathon. I've run it a handful of times. I'm always curious about how athletes select races. So why Boston?
For me, I wanted to do Boston back in 2021, so the fall edition, mostly because when I tell people I'm a professional marathoner, they'd be like, oh, well, have you done Boston? And I'd be like, well, no. And they're like, well, my cousin did Boston.
You should train and maybe you'll be cute.
Yeah. They'll be like, oh, could you qualify? I'm like, well, yeah. So I felt like it was something I needed to do just to like check this box so I can tell people, yes, I've run Boston. And then, of course, I had the really distinct opportunity to run Boston just 6 months later when it happened in the spring. And I felt like I couldn't give up that opportunity. And both races have been okay races, but I wouldn't say A-day races for me. I've had some struggles in Newton specifically. And at this point, it kind of feels like I have a chip on my shoulder there and I want to like go get some revenge. So that's why I'm heading back to Boston this year. But also, you just can't replicate Boston anywhere else. There's something so exciting about from Hopkinton to Boylston Street. It's loud, it's electric. You have support the entire way. It's a well-run race. Like those things are really important to, especially elite athletes. They really know what they're doing there at Boston.
For sure. This podcast is a Boston Hype podcast for the next couple of weeks. We've got you and then Sarah Vaughn is next week's guest.
Awesome.
So I love talking about... Yeah, exactly. Those Newton Hills. So I used to live in Boston. I was out there last weekend and I ran and it told me that I had run the hills for the 70th time according to Strava. So I love those. Love me some Newton Hills.
That's wild. And statistic.
Yes, I do think that it can be the fastest part of the course if you arrive there appropriately. Mm-hmm. But it is so hard to actually do that.
You know, I don't actually disagree with you. I haven't ever had a hard time getting through the hills, getting on top of Heartbreak. That's really not that difficult. It's like the screaming, eating your knees downhill after Heartbreak that you think, oh, I'm going to like really roll into this and I'm going to crush down this hill, but it hurts so bad.
Yeah, it's like a 200-foot drop between the top of Heartbreak to turning onto Beacon Street, which is really like, it's like 2 miles.
Yeah. It's a long downhill. It hurts. You think it's gonna, like, you're gonna make up all this time, but you really are just trying to survive, is how I've ran it the last 2 years. But this year, I'm gonna run it smarter and I'm gonna fly down that hill.
So what's it like in the pro field? Because I've run it a few times. I've attempted to race it, I've attempted to fun run it, and I've attempted to race it and then pivoted to fun running. So I've done it a couple of different ways. Obviously never in the pro field. What is that energy like at Boston?
It's super exciting. I have obviously a pretty similar last name to Des, and I guess I'm like the same height-ish. So I get screamed at like I'm Des all the time. Like I hear go Des probably way more often than I've ever heard my name there.
Oh, because the first 4 letters?
Yeah, I just think, oh, Lind, and then you're like, oh, it's got to be Des, right? So that's super awesome that people think they know me. I guess that's exciting. Someday they'll hopefully actually know me. But it's fun. The only thing that's tough about it is once it strings out, it strings out. I know that like a little bit farther back, obviously there's crowds and crowds of people running, but once she gets a little bit fast for like once the top end women start to make those moves, we really do string out. And I'd say that's maybe my only downside of Boston. But other than that, it's electric. People are out there to see the pro women for sure. And then.
So you mentioned early on that you got into the sport and you were excited to see women like Kara and Des out there running. Des is on the line in a couple of weeks with you. What is it like to have people like that who you looked up to and now you're competing with? Yeah,
it's actually funny. I was talking to somebody about that on my run today, talking about how she took second in 2011. And they were like, she's been doing it that long and you get to toe the line with her and compete amongst her. Like she has so much experience. it's super exciting. I still fangirl a little bit over people like Des and Molly. But I think I just look at them and try to learn as much as I can. They have so much knowledge. I really want to execute this race the way that Des normally does and run kind of conservative in the beginning. There's just so much to learn from those incredible women.
For sure. I run a lot with Kara out here in Boulder, and like every run is like a podcast where I get to just like learn from her.
Just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm incredibly jealous.
It is absolutely a wealth of knowledge. Sometimes I text her, I'm like, Kara, I've got this thing. I know you've had this experience before. Can we talk? And I'm so grateful for that. But honestly, like that's why I started this podcast, because I have such fun access to all these people and I learn a lot from them. And I love passing that along to those of you who are listening.
Yeah. And even like I'm still learning. It's a sport where it's like there's always something to learn, I guess. And what's amazing, I think, about running is that like what I'm experiencing is exactly what a 4-hour marathoner is experiencing. It transcends the whole way.
Totally. I've had that same conversation with pro athletes and 7-hour marathoners. And I had a woman named India Cook on the podcast, and her goal at New York last year was to break 7 hours. And to hear her talk about the process of going through that and chasing that as her goal, it was fascinating. And we hear so much about the front of the pack, but I think there are, just as worthwhile stories, the middle, back, and, everywhere in between.
I totally agree.
Also, if you ever are in a position where you're like, okay, I've figured it out, you should probably keep learning.
Yeah. I always say that if I finish a race and I'm 100% satisfied with how I executed everything that went well, like if I'm 100% happy with it, I will retire, because what else is there to know? Like that's what keeps me hungry in the marathon, is being like, oh, if I just would have made that move or, fueled a little bit better.
Totally. I had a race that went about 90% well. And I'm like, if that's my best ever, I'm happy.
Exactly.
Let's talk about getting into life as a pro runner. This podcast is brought to both of us by Puma. You are a Puma athlete. Talk to me about the journey into professional running. Yeah.
So, like I said, when I graduated college, I moved to Minneapolis, but I moved here completely on my own ride, basically. I wasn't a team member of Minnesota Distance Elite. I wasn't getting any of their stipend or healthcare or gym access. I was just getting Coach Lindwurm coaching me and an invitation to practice. I was a 2-time All-American. I can't even remember what my 10K was. It's quite embarrassing. I wasn't somebody anybody thought would go pro as a runner for sure. But my coach had seen me in long runs, just kind of crushing. So he's like, I think you've got potential to at least qualify for the Olympic trials. I spent a season here with the team, and Coach Lendo also saw that potential and decided that I was worthy to be a team member. And I was here, trying to do the math, like 3 years before I got sponsored by Puma. I was, sitting at my kitchen table, grinding, working my 40 hours a week. When I got an email from my agent, Howie, saying, I think it was titled Puma offer. And I remember I didn't even open the email. I've told this story 1,000 times, but I love it. I didn't open the email. I called my dad. I was crying. And he said, Dad, I just got a Puma offer. And he goes, okay, well, tell me all, like, he was wanting all the details. And I was like, I don't even know. I was like so excited. I had no idea what they were offering me, but like for a shoe to like take a stab at me, being somebody who was a little bit like, obviously I was doing successful things, but I wasn't winning national championships. I wasn't, winning marathons necessarily all the time. I was really grateful, and I was going to sign with them pretty much immediately. I was like, Howie, I don't care what it says. I want to sign.
So what does that feel like, that a brand feels that you're a good fit to represent them and that they believe in you so much that they're actually going to pay you to do this?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, because it's kind of been the story of my career. I was a walk-on at Northern. My coach believed that I had something in me there. I was a walk-on at Minnesota Distance Elite. The coach had to believe in me. And then, Puma had to believe in me, even though at that time I wasn't like a top American necessarily. So I take that to heart, and that's something I'll forever be grateful for from them. And they've been nothing but the best to me. I've never felt like I was treated unfairly with Puma. There's, especially now, so much coming out about different shoe companies. We all have, a certain brand in our head that treats athletes unfairly sometimes. And I feel incredibly grateful to be so well supported by Puma.
Amazing. If you've been enjoying this podcast and can spare 90 seconds of your time today, can you do me a favor? Can you pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review? It helps other people find and enjoy the podcast too. Thanks so much. As a proud New Englander, I'm always excited to see brands from the area who are doing good in the world and doing good for our running community. That's why we're thrilled to say that this episode is sponsored by Darn Tough, started and headquartered in Vermont. You may know of Darn Tough for their durability and warmth, but did you know that they have a whole line of running socks to keep you staying dry and comfortable for the long run? Darn Tough's running socks are incredibly durable, especially in high wear areas, and they're made with breathable mesh, and they're ultra lightweight and incredibly comfortable. You might be thinking, aren't their socks made of wool? Won't it be too hot on my feet? Well, it turns out that merino wool socks are perfect for keeping your feet at the ideal temperature and dry regardless of if you're running in cold or hot weather. In fancy words, wool helps with thermoregulation. I've been a fan of and running in Darn Tough socks for years now, so we're excited to welcome them to For the Long Run family. Get a pair of your own at the link in the show notes. This episode of For the Long Run podcast is sponsored by Puma. For 75 years, Puma has been pushing sports and culture forward with innovative design and development. We are honored to have Puma supporting this show and supporting the running community at large. My greatest compliment for running shoe is, I didn't think about it once. The purpose of having the right gear is to enable you to do anything you want out there. When I'm running in Puma's Deviate Nitro First Mile, all I'm thinking about is literally anything else. I think about the community, I think about why trying hard things is so rewarding, I think about how cute Alfie is, and I think about how much I love tacos, and I think about the big things like how I want to leave each place I inhabit better than I found it. You know what I'm not thinking about? What's on my feet. And that's the best thing about Puma running shoes. They're designed to help you get out there effortlessly so you don't have to worry about what's on your feet. Just need to worry about putting one foot in front of the other. Check out a pair for yourself at puma.com and use the code FORTHELONGRUN, all one word, for 20% off. Again, when you support Puma, you're supporting me and the rest of the podcast team. Thanks again to Puma for supporting us. Is it a good market to buy a home in? What about to sell a home? What even goes on in the housing market? How do you even keep track? Well, good news for you, you don't have to know all the answers if you're interested in buying or selling your home, because you can just work with the best realtor around, Lauren Daniels. Whether you're thinking of buying or selling your home, Lauren is your go-to. She treats every client with care and helps make what could be a very scary process, dare I say, fun. Lauren helps you get organized and stay on top of important deadlines and guides you towards the right home for you instead of pushing you towards something that doesn't feel right. Even if you're not ready yet or you're not in the Denver or Boulder area, we highly recommend following Lauren on Instagram because she's always sharing great information about the housing market. Give her a follow at lauren.in.colorado on Instagram. And if you're already ready to start the conversation, give her a shout at ldaniels@milehighmodern.com and let her know we sent you. That's ldaniels@milehighmodern.com. So speaking of Puma and the Boston Marathon, like I said, this episode and all episodes in March, April, and May are brought to you by Puma. And as part of that, we have a super exciting shakeout happening in Boston, or two shakeouts happening in Boston. So if you want to come run with Dakotah and myself and some other fun guests, you can check out the link in the show notes. It'll be 2:00 on Saturday and 8:30 on Sunday if you're looking to get in some big cat energy on your Boston Marathon weekend.
Absolutely. I'd love to see tons of people out there.
Like I said, check the show notes for more details on that, and we hope to see you there. So another component of that I find so fascinating is this balance between pro athletes competing and pro athletes, doing all of the things over a marathon weekend, right? Boston is different in that it's a Monday race. It's one of the only races that is a Monday race, except for maybe July 4th races. But there are so many events that happen Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'm curious how you plan to balance those obligations with, like, you have a job to do and it's to perform. but it's also to represent the brand in a strong way. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, so this year isn't quite as bad. Last year on Saturday, I was busy with either BAA things or Puma things from, I believe it was like 9 in the morning to literally 8 o'clock at night. I had one lunch break. I got to eat dinner then at night. And I remember like being in the thick of it and kind of being like, this is taking a toll on me right now. But you're also kind of riding the energy of like, showing up to a Puma run or, doing an interview with whoever. It is really exciting. And honestly, you get a really good night's sleep after that. The other side of it is if it was ever feeling like it was way, way too much for me, like I was, getting really drained from it. I know that at any moment I could have said to somebody at Puma, like, hey, Jared, you know what? This is really taking too much from me right now. And the thing is they all want to see you succeed on Monday. Obviously, yeah, they want to see you represent the brand on Saturday and Friday or Sunday. But what's going to be more important is what happens on Monday. So I, at no moment, felt like I was trapped into doing anything. And same thing with this Boston. They asked, they don't say, hey, Dakotah, you're going to be here at this time. They ask and say, hey, would you be willing to do the shakeout run? And of course, like I'm super happy to do those things. But if it ever felt too much, I don't think anybody would be angry with me if I couldn't do it.
That's awesome. One of the pieces I love so much about the Boston weekend is how everything is so condensed, right? Boston is not a big city. I mean, maybe compared to some others it is, but not a big city. There's so much happening in such a small space. Talk to me about your ability to interact with the running community and have people, excited to see you and just that strong community vibe in general. What does that mean?
Yeah, it means a lot. I actually had a couple people take a picture of me, not like with me, last year and be like, oh my God, and put it on their like Instagram story and be like, oh my God, I saw Dakotah. And I was like, oh, you should have like said hi. Like I would really love that. I think it's so fun when somebody recognizes me just because I still kind of feel like a small fish in a big pond in the running community as far as pros go. So I really personally enjoy when somebody reaches out because I love that somebody went out of their way to, kind of follow me and know my story. That means a ton to me and it makes my job so much more fun as a runner.
That's awesome. I talk to a lot of pros about this and they're always like, it's fun because for a couple of days you're a big celebrity and then you can go back to, normal life. It's not like we're LeBron or whatever, where you get recognized everywhere you go.
Right. Tuesday, I'll be back in my local Trader Joe's and nobody will know who I am.
Do you like that?
Yeah, I do. Because occasionally you like slip it into a conversation like, oh, I'm a professional runner. And like somebody's like, what is that?
Have you run Boston?
Yeah, exactly.
How do people respond when you say that?
It's usually with a look of confusion. I usually have to explain it like, okay, I'm like a NFL player, but a runner. Like it's the same. I am at the top of my sport, but it's just a lot less well known. It's just not on the TV every Sunday night.
Do you ever think about that and like think about what the high school version of yourself would think of the Dakotah of today?
Oh, high school me would have laughed if she knew this is what she was getting to do. Like she'd be super excited, but she didn't even really know that this wasn't a career opportunity for sure.
What would you tell her?
I would tell her to just keep being the person on the starting line who works harder than anyone else. I think that's been my ticket to finding this much success. I didn't start running and was like this high school phenom or anything. I honestly lost every race my freshman year in track, but just hate being bad at things and love working hard. So I think that's brought me to where I'm at.
So you mentioned in the intro a bunch of different sports that you participate in. You just said you hate being bad at things. I can't imagine you're great at all of those things. So what is it like to be in a different arena and not be at the top of your game?
Yeah, I just recently got into pickleball, which is sweeping the nation.
You and Mike Wardian.
Yeah. And
by the way, Mike ran a 71-minute half today at 48 years old. And that dude is just incredible.
That is incredible. Shout out to him. That's amazing. I hope I'm doing that still. But when I learned pickleball, I was immediately like, I was okay. Like I'm athletic. I can move left to right. But like I didn't have the skill to like place a good, like a good serve or like, I was volleying them up really high. But I think being bad at things like that really sparks a fire in me. And then I get like almost obsessive. Because as soon as I played it once, I was like, okay, I've got to play every weekend. maybe I'll have to split my time between being a pro runner and a pro pickleball player. Like, anytime I do something and I'm not great at it, it's like a fun challenge for me. I'm never somebody who's like a sore loser or doesn't want to do something because I'm bad at it. I find it fun to be bad at things in a way because it means that there's all this room for opportunity.
I love that. And it definitely, it helps. I'm sure it helps with the balance and helps keep things in perspective. You mentioned success there a couple of times. We talked about defining success and thinking about defining success, but I don't think I heard an explicit definition of from you on it. So how would you define success?
For me personally, success is where I am working my hardest, doing my best, but also for me having fun. If I'm ever not having fun, that's a shame in my opinion. I am somebody who puts her heart and soul into things. And for me, it's got to be fun. I don't think when I'm on a starting line or playing pickleball or whatever I'm doing and I'm super serious about it, that's just... I don't know. I think that takes the joy out of life. I think that takes the joy out of whatever activity you're doing. Even if I want to be the best, but I want to have fun doing it.
I talked to your teammate, Aisha Protlier, in 2021 on the podcast, and she said at the time, I'm 30 years old. I've been doing this for 15 years. If I weren't still having fun, I wouldn't be doing it. And it's always refreshing to hear professional athletes talk about the importance of fun. I mean, I look at Team Boss and the amount of fun that they're having here in Boulder and in Crested Butte and all over the country and world, really. It's like the epitome of how I intend to experience the sport of like, this is all supposed to be fun. And the second that it stops being fun, it's time to reassess.
I completely agree with you. I just think about like when you were a kid, running around playing tag, like that's really all we're doing out there. It's just all a big game. Why not? If you're not enjoying it, why would you go torture yourself that way?
So let's say you're deep in marathon training, which you were a week ago. So hopefully that we have some memories here. Yeah. How do you balance the like lots and lots of hard work with, again, keeping it fun?
Yeah, I actually take something from Katie Germain, one of my teammates here in Minnesota. She's told me once that if she ever feels like she's, especially on a double, like she just doesn't want to go do her 6-mile double, she'll put on her shoes, she'll go out and she'll run for a mile. And if at the end of that mile, she's like, I don't want to be running anymore, she'll turn around. So I kind of take that into like anytime I'm not feeling it, I'm like, I'll go run for 5 minutes. And if at the end of 5 minutes, I'll flip. But I've never flipped. Nobody really ever flips around because it's like that initial like, I have to get off the couch and put on my shoes. But as soon as you're out there and it's a nice day, or even if it's like a rainy day, like you
guys have nice days in Minneapolis?
You know what? Don't even get me started. We got 8 inches of snow yesterday. So I don't remember if we ever have nice days, but I think some are going to come.
Maybe after this cycle. So one phrase that my coach put in my training log recently, a few weeks ago now, is motivation follows action. And it's exactly in line with what you just said, where many times people aren't motivated to get out the door, but once you get out the door, the motivation potentially follows. And so in this period where I'm running a whole lot less than I have in many years, I'm letting that be sort of the guiding principle of like, just put the shoes on and meet a friend and go do it. And there's so much power and truth in that because fundamentally, like running is silly, right? Like we're getting uncomfortable. It's physically impactful and it's completely optional. I mean, you have a job outside of running too, yeah. It sounds like. So it is truly completely optional. And yet we choose to do it. it enriches our life and it's hard. And I think there's definitely beauty in that, but there's also like, it's not going to be easy all the time.
Absolutely. And you never finish a run and think, oh, I wish I hadn't spent those 40 minutes outside. Like you end up enjoying it regardless. And trust me, I definitely do think on the starting line sometimes, like I have supplemental income from my other job. Like I could make money in a million other ways, but you finish and you love it.
So what is it like having both a professional running career and a separate career?
For me, it works really well. When I first went pro with Puma, I actually quit my day job. I was a housing advocate. So I was helping low or no income individuals find housing. And I ended up quitting that because that was pretty emotionally draining for me, working with people who are in really hard times. And I had one season where I wasn't doing anything else. I was coaching on the side, but realistically, coaching doesn't take up too much time. So I did enjoy that. I think there were really a lot of benefits from it. But for the mental side of things for me, I enjoy having a job. And my paralegal job isn't emotional at all. It's very much like copy, paste words all day. And I enjoy it because it's like, if I have a bad workout on a Tuesday, it's like, well, I've got to go to work. So like, there's not a lot of time to dwell on it. And vice versa. If I have a really great workout, I can't like pump myself up too much. So I'm like, well, I got to shower and log on. It just keeps me really grounded and also takes away any feeling of financially needing to do well. At the end of the day, we still make a lot of our money from prize money and appearance fees. And I think having the financial freedom to not have to place top 10 at Boston makes it more enjoyable. It makes it more fun for me. It kind of circles back to that.
It's super cool when you can do things because you want to versus you have to, right? I have been doing this podcast for 4+ years, and it's not the main source of my income. And so I get to do whatever I want with it, essentially. And I get to work with awesome brands and share awesome brands, but like I get to be incredibly particular with who I choose, and I can afford to not take a sponsor instead of taking a sponsor I don't want to work with. And so it's cool to hear you say the same thing in a different lens where like it gives you that freedom or that luxury to do things you want to do versus because you have to do them. I think there's so much power in being able to do that. And I'm sure it manifests in, how you feel on the start line and how you feel on that, Tuesday afternoon double, that this is all completely optional.
Yeah, it definitely gives you freedom. And I appreciate that. And I honestly love my job as a paralegal. So at the end of the day, nothing I do is like dreadful at all, I guess.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
So last year when I had Sara Vaughn on the podcast, Kara listened through the episode and took notes and used that in the broadcast. So if she's listening again or someone's listening again, tuning into the broadcast, what should we know about you going into Boston 2023?
I think if you see me, if I happen to be on the TV and I'm smiling, it's like a legit smile. Everybody always asks like, oh, are you doing that? Like, are you forcing your smile? And it's really a real smile for two reasons of like, number one, the science proves, and Eliud Kipchoge will also tell you it does make things a little bit easier. And two, it's like once you smile and the crowd sees you smile, they're always like, oh, they like lose their mind. Like, how could you possibly be enjoying this? And they get really excited, and then that gets you excited. It kind of goes back and forth. I'd say that's the biggest.
And the crowd at Boston loves to do that.
They love to get involved. They love to be loud. So it really is a genuine smile because it just makes it so much more fun. I mean, towards the end, there are some times where I feel like I'm faking it a little bit, but that's because I'm trying to like mentally get myself out of a dark spot.
So if someone's watching in person, what should they say to you as you run by?
I love to hear that I look strong. I think that's my favorite thing to hear. If somebody tells me at mile 11 that I'm almost there, I will probably stop and have a strong talking to them. But tell me I look strong, I guess.
Okay, I'll be at 24.2. Can I say almost there? Nope, that's too early.
It's too early. 2 miles. There's a lot that can go wrong there.
I'll say looking strong.
Okay, thank you.
What about the marathon what's your favorite part about the marathon?
I think it's just such a challenge every time. I know I can go run a 5K and be within, 20 seconds of what I think I could run almost every time. There's something about a marathon that has so many variables. You just never know how you're going to feel on that day. You never know what you're going to feel like at 20. That makes it so challenging and gives you the opportunity to best somebody that you shouldn't. I think especially a course like Boston, you see people beating people who they shouldn't. And I think that makes it really fun and exciting for me.
Yeah, it's such a fun. I mean, I look at the 2018 race and how that shook out.
That could be this year. You never know. That could be me.
It could be. Hopefully, it's not pouring that much. But you had the prep with the Minnesota winter. I am curious about that type of winter training. Like, how do you get through such a brutal period of weather?
I am incredibly blessed. I got back from Albuquerque about a week ago. I spent 2.5 months there. But I have spent many winters here training, obviously. And you do a lot on the treadmill, a lot on the indoor track. And honestly, you just have to continue to trust that your effort is right on a treadmill, because it's really hard to pull confidence from those type of workouts when you're grinding for 16 miles on a treadmill. It's hard to say that that's the same as outside, because it really isn't. But you have to kind of play that mental game of this is still the same. I'm still gaining fitness, I guess.
Cool. We had a couple of fan submitted questions that I want to get to. People are curious about the experience for an elite athlete leaving Boston, going out to Hopkinton, and then coming back to Boston, but more so the first half. We see the second half. Talk to me about what the journey out to Hopkinton is like. What type of bus are you on? What sort of amenities does the bus have? People want to know the sort of behind the scenes there.
Yeah, it's a super nice coach bus, I guess you would call it. It's full of nervous energy. I think both times I wanted to throw up on it, because you're looking out the windows. Police are literally shutting down the freeway for us. And it just feels so big, and you feel so important, and it's honestly super. I almost hate the drive out to Hopkinton because
it's so far.
It's so far. You I have to go to the bathroom. I'm sitting
you're
next to
you're on the highway.
Yeah. So it's that part's, it's very nice. And then we get out to Hopkinton and we get to sit in this infamous little Korean church. So you're sitting alongside Olympians and, some of your favorite runners. And it's a super weird vibe in there, because everybody's nervous and doing their own little pre-race things. And this year is going to be even crazier, because Kipchoge is going to be there and everybody's going to want to get a glance. But we get to sit in this little weird church, and then they have all, anything we would need in there, coffee, bagels, whatever. And then we get to warm up on it's not even a quarter mile. It's maybe a 100-meter stretch of gravel is where we get to warm up, and it's just back and forth, back and forth. So that part's a little rough, but it's a pretty nice little start line if you can get over the nerves.
And what do pros do for a marathon warm up?
I do 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how I feel. And I think that's kind of standard. Nobody's going out and doing 3 miles before a marathon. That's just wasteful.
It's always interesting to see how people do it. Some people just roll off the bus, and for the regular race in Boston, you're walking I don't know. I've looked at my watch. I'm like, whoa, I'm at 3,000 steps already today. That's a
nice
lot.
warm up, honestly.
Yeah, it's a nice warm up. I ran CIM this past fall, and I was at 4,000 steps before the race started. And I was like, okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, you almost have to not look at that, because I think that might get into my head a little bit.
Totally. And that was before a 5 to 10 minute warm up. We were just circling the block trying to get on the bus and blah, blah, blah. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always cool to hear about the behind the scenes experience. What are you looking forward to the most?
I always look forward to Wellesley. I think going through Wellesley on the course is so much fun. And everybody told me you'd hear it before you could see it. And I thought like they were silly or like kind of making a joke, but it's 100% true. And there is so much energy in that, like, we'll say maybe a half-mile section that can carry you through the whole marathon.
It's funny to watch people's splits and you're like, yep, I know exactly where Wellesley College is because you speed up and then you slow down.
Yeah, I remember looking down and being like 15 seconds faster than my like race pace. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to chill. But also like these women are amazing.
Yeah, it's a fun spot. So the marathon's in a couple weeks. You've just come through the big period of training. How do you handle the taper? The reason I ask is I've never been able to handle it well. I always have something, Anyway, what's your relationship with the taper?
I call them the taper tears. So if that gives
the taper tears.
Yeah, that gives you any idea of how I think about them. I'm somebody who's like a high mileage girl. I love to kind of be in that grind. So I know that my sleep is about to really plummet. Usually my mental state kind of is a little wonky of like, I feel like I need to be doing all these things, but we also know that I shouldn't be doing these things. So I usually try to start like a puzzle or something where I'm forced to sit, but it's also mindful and kind of keeps your mind busy. And then I also just kind of accept that my body's going to feel like trash for the next couple of weeks, but it's going to feel good on the starting line. I feel like this is when everybody's little niggles pop up. And I'm fully expecting that. Like when you have done it enough times that you know exactly what to expect, it becomes less scary. I still call them the taper tears because that's exactly what they are. They're tears.
Makes sense. I had someone tell me, must have been like 2016, so I would have only run 2 marathons by then. She was like, if you feel good in the taper, that's pretty uncommon.
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, Dakotah, this has been a blast. We're excited to follow along with your adventure out there from Hopkinton to Boston. If you're following along on race day, you heard what she said. Looking strong. That's what she wants to hear. We'll be out with the Puma crew at 24.2, so we'll see you out there. And thanks for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, of course. I was happy to be on.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.